Good morning and welcome, delegates. I'm MGEU President Kyle Ross, and I'm happy to welcome you to the 2023 Special Convention. This is an important convention where we'll be focused on debating resolutions and making decisions that will help guide our union's bargaining strategy over the coming months and into the future. I want to take a moment to thank all the members who worked on these important constitution and finance resolutions. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, both pro and con. But I want to begin by acknowledging that the MGEU operates throughout Manitoba and is located on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Nishawak, Ninewak, Nehituak, Dakota, Dene, and Métis people. Our primary office is located on the Treaty 1 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation. Our work extends throughout Treaties 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10. We acknowledge that Winnipeg's water is sourced from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation. We respect the treaties made on these territories. We dedicate ourselves to move forward with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration to make Manitoba an inclusive and accessible place for everyone who lives here. I'd now like to welcome Elder Barbara Niepenack for today's invocation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank MGEU for inviting me to be here today. This is always the proper way to do business in reference to protocol. I've been given tobacco to do the prayer. It's always an honor to do that. And I acknowledge each and every one of you. I pray in my language. I was always taught to pray in the language you know best, and my first language is Anishinaabe. But in my prayer, I ask for strength and guidance, and I pray for each and every one of you and your families. I pray for people that are sick, children that are suffering, and people that are homeless. That's who I pray for. But most of all, I pray to this event. It's very critical at this time. We stand together, even though we are not here together, face to face. The task you are set to do is very important because it affects all of us. So with that, I'm going to do my prayer in my language. My traditional name is Ruth Thunderbird Woman, and I am from the Bear Clan. That's how we do follow our protocols, by introducing ourselves with our traditional name. Ani jobinesi kwendishe kene mi wumaka ndodem. Me mawe ngagi mina na mata we kwensh and shinabe kwea hi misha seman. Shibmegagi sumakishe manitu. With a shenongo magani boyan the shibago sendan. Chishaweni mi wangisha manitu. Chiwi chitiang magap moseng, chamana chitiang. And behu itine magarinanik misiega shekushinwat. Ka kusiot to go a kagunchigeot, kapatakotiswat. Mege we know the shibago send them all in a bematisian. And big up in on chiha hota get tut. Utang a hota get tut. Me echo get in a shibago send them a kishamanitu. Chimini wang songetewin. And Beminongo Magani Boyan, and Metamo walk and going, Kagita Biot, Kahikituatuma, Metashenong Shamanito, Eshabago Sendaman, showing the Missionam, Wabandationam, and a Bimatisiwin, and Behechamanachi Tiang, and Behe Quichip Musang marking, Chiminoying, and the Shikigo. How me Watanongo may Bishabago Sendaman Nongagishuk, Nandangarina Magikatuan, Chibituan Gigituin. How me question to get no gagishuk, and they get me question to Nagashamanito. Miigwech, thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. I acknowledge in each one of you. Miigwech, thank you. Have a good gathering.
Thank you. Thank you, Elder Barbara Niepenack, for your important words and for being here at our convention. We're going to play a recording of the O Canada with Jeremy Penner, Tim Osmond, and the Stanley County Cut-Ups. Jeremy is a proud member of Local 911, Winnipeg Paramedics. I would like to ask delegates to rise if they're able, from wherever you are, and sing along if you would like. We won't be able to hear you, so sing it loud and proud. At this time, I'd like to introduce our provincial officers. If you give way when I call your name. Our first Vice President, Scott Clooney, who also serves as Chair of the Constitution, Bylaw and Structure Committee. Our second Vice President, Kimberly Lynn, who also serves as Chair of the Finance Committee. Our third Vice President is Chris Kwan, who serves as Chair of the Membership and Education Committee. Unfortunately, Stephanie Swain, our fourth Vice President, had a late flight yesterday returning from Dipshee's Women's Conference, so she'll be in shortly, but she's not in yet, but she sends her best wishes. I would also like to introduce Kevin Reback, President of the Manitoba Federation of Labor, and he serves as our parliamentarian. Jean-Guy Bourgeois, MGEU's Director of Internal Operations. Sheila Gordon is MGEU's Director of Negotiation. And Janet Kaler is MGEU's Director of Member Services, who are attending virtually today. I'd now like to welcome Sheila Gordon, our Director of Negotiations, to the podium. Sheila will go through the respectful conduct, convention process, procedure policy, and then do a brief overview of delegate booklet and how to vote, and of course, how you can get to the mics and speak, so everybody's on the same page. Thank you. Here's Sheila.
Thanks, Kyle. In your delegate booklet on page 7, you will see a copy of the Respectful Conduct Convention Policy Procedure Process. I'd like to take this opportunity to read through it with you. The MGEU is committed to maintaining a positive, safe, and healthy environment for all members and staff, whether we are together in person or virtually. Solidarity within our union is based on the principle that we are all equal and deserve mutual respect. Any behavior that is disrespectful, intimidating, hostile, or offensive will not be condoned or tolerated. This behavior includes, but is not limited to, harassment on the basis of race, sex, age, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, political belief, physical or mental abilities. If a member, staff person, or guest at the MGEU convention feels they have been disrespected, they should let the offending individual know that their conduct is unacceptable and unwelcome. If they do not feel comfortable talking with the individual themselves or cannot resolve the matter, or they require further assistance, please contact either me or MGEU Director of Internal Operations, Jean-Guy Bourgeois. Jean-Guy and I can both be reached for this purpose during convention by email at conduct@mgeu.ca or by calling the MGEU Resource Center to be connected to either of us directly. The number is 204-982-6438 or 1-866-982-6438. Please see the Respectful Workplace Policy and Harassment Policy in the MGEU Policy and Procedures Manual for more information. Over the course of the day, you and your fellow delegates have a very important job to do. My job, at least at this point, is to help you get started. To that end, I will be taking you through a quick overview of the delegate booklet. During the overview, we will also conduct a test vote on the voting platform. First off, everyone is reminded to use inclusive language when addressing or introducing others. The terms delegates, participants, members, activists, all of these are appropriate. You can also use brothers, sisters, friends. Using inclusive language, whether at convention or in our workplaces, is one simple way to create a more accepting environment so everyone can feel seen, respected, and included. Convention is being recorded, both audio and video, and as always, it's being live streamed on our website at mgeu.ca/convention. After convention, a video recording of all proceedings will also be posted on our YouTube channel. I would encourage all delegates to keep their cameras on, if at all possible today. It's best if we can see each other as we work throughout the day. Your delegate booklet has all of the important information that you'll need to participate in convention and will be your reference guide through the proceedings. The delegate guide, resolutions, and information about the bargaining framework that we'll be discussing are all found in the booklet. Also, the MGU conducts convention business using a modified version of Borno's Rules of Order, which you can also find on page 35 of the booklet. On page 13 of the delegate booklet, you'll see how to speak to a resolution. In a convention hall, you would just stand at a pro or con mic. But for a virtual convention, there are a couple of more steps that you have to take if you want to participate in the debate. First, you will join the speakers list in a breakout room once the discussion on the resolution has begun. To do this, select the breakout button, or the breakout rooms button rather, in the Zoom, shown there on the screen in the image, and select the appropriate breakout room, either pro or con. You will momentarily leave the meeting to have your sound checked and be placed on the appropriate speakers list by a technician. Then you'll be returned to the main meeting room where you'll wait to be called in order by the chair. When the chair calls you, the chair will say, the chair recognizes, and then they'll say your name. If you're a first-time speaker, please say so. You'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, either your mic will be turned off or you'll be told your time is up. If you experience choppy video or audio at some point today, here are some tips to help you with an unstable internet connection. Avoid using virtual backgrounds or video filters in Zoom. We do have a virtual background that you can download from the convention page at mgu.ca. But if you're having connection issues, we don't recommend that you use any virtual background at all. The other thing that you can do is reduce the bandwidth usage on the network in your home by stopping any video streaming like YouTube, chat functions, or Netflix. You can also and ought also to stop online video games or music streaming in your home. If necessary, stop sharing your video in Zoom and see if your audio connection improves. If you require any assistance with your voting credentials or have trouble logging back into the meeting at some point, contact DOTS by email at mgusupport@dataonthespot.com or by phoning 1-833-368-7111. This contact information is found on the back cover of your delegate guide for easy reference. All voting on resolutions takes place on the DOTS platform. Everyone should already be logged in on their device to vote. So at this time, I'd like to call on Michael Carmen from DOTS to run through the instructions on how to vote and he will conduct a test vote for us. Michael?
Great, thanks very much, Janet. So my name is Michael, I'm from Data on the Spot. And we're just going to go through a few slides just showing some meeting participation as well as the DOTS debate portion, and then finish it off with the voting. So you're going to want to first look for your voting credentials that came to you in an email from credentials@dataonthespot.com. If at any point during the meeting you need any assistance at all, please reach out to us. You can reach out to us in the chat at DOTS support, by email at mgusupport@dataonthespot.com, or by phone at 1-833-368-7111. So your credential email looks something like this. You're going to make note of your ID and your password. You're going to use that to log into the website to vote. And there's a link to the voting page in the email as well. It's a blue link that says MGEU Secure Voting Page. And just a couple quick notes before we get into the technical part of voting. We're helping people rename themselves, and if you need to change your name or rename yourself appropriately, you just need to. We're following a naming convention. Just the type of attendee you are, first letter, and then your full first and last name. So you can do that by clicking the participants button at the bottom and finding your name and clicking rename. On a phone, it looks something like this. And when we get to the debate portion, if you wish to speak for or against a motion, you're going to need to join the breakout room of your choice. So in that room, you're going to have your sound checked. You're going to be placed in the appropriate speakers list, and then eventually return to the main meeting room where you'll await to be called upon. At that point, you'll be unmuted and spotlit once it's your turn to speak. So the icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen looks something like this. That'll let you into the breakout rooms, and you can join either pro, con, or the point rooms. On a mobile device, it is at the top. And then just remember to click that yes button to confirm that you do want to join the breakout room. So on mobile, just select at the top like so, and then join with the blue join button. Once your audio has been checked, you'll be returned to the main room and added to the speakers list. When it's your turn to speak, you'll be spotlit and unmuted. So now back to the voting. And just a reminder, we have opened up a test vote. I believe the chair will go over this as well after, but there's a test vote that's going to be following these instructions that asks if you're present and engaged in convention. So after we've gone through this, please feel free to go ahead and try that vote out. So the login page looks something like this. You're going to enter that ID and password in. Once you get in, there's going to be a section called current ballots. The vote will appear there. If you don't see an active ballot, like for example, once we open up another ballot, you will need to refresh your page. So just click the next vote button. That refreshes the page, and then the link will show up as a blue hyperlink under current ballots. It will say vote now, and then the title of the motion. So you make your selection, then click continue. And then there's a second step, you have to confirm your vote as well. So don't forget to click confirm. And then once you see this green success message, you know that your ballot has been cast. Once you're done that, you can navigate back to the Zoom meeting. And once again, you can contact us in the chat. You can contact us by email at mgeusupport@dataonthespot.com or by phone at 1-833-368-7111. Thank you very much.
It's back to me. Thanks a lot, Michael. I will now turn the chair back to Kyle.
Now I'm going to call for the adoption of the agenda. We'll need a mover and a seconder. To indicate, we need someone probably to raise their hand on Zoom to indicate. So we have Les Sosowski, I believe, is moving, and Dean Werbisky is seconding. So we have a mover and seconder for the agenda. Oh, sorry, the test vote is still open apparently. So we'll move and second that after we finish the test vote. So just give it a second and that vote will come for the agenda, but first we have to close out the test vote. I just want to say, for those of you with your cameras on, I can actually see you. We have a big screen here with, I can see 49 people. James, I see you waving. Nice to see you guys. It's a little better than talking to a blank screen, so I really appreciate those with their cameras on. And I think the rest of the front do as well. It's funny, I've done so much virtual meetings. When I've seen certain screens, I know who they are just by the background or who's there, because we've done so much of this over the last 2 years, so, or leading up into the last convention as well. So it's kind of funny. I was talking to Chris about it. I'm like, yeah, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. I can just tell. We're still working on the vote for the agenda, so it's coming. The vote is now open for the agenda, so please refresh on your voting webpage and vote. Uh, 15 seconds left in the vote. So please, those of you who haven't voted yet, please vote. The voting is now closed. The results will be posted shortly. The adoption of the agenda is carried. 154 in favor, 1 opposed. Thank you. I would like to extend a big hello to all of our Solidarity guests and honorary life members who have joined us today online. I think it's great to hear what the union is doing moving forward, and I'm glad you guys are attending with us. And then we're going to go into now the President's address. So just it'll take a second here before we can get going. I appreciate your patience. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Delegates, we're going to get to resolutions very soon, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Before we do, I want to spend a few minutes talking about what's got us here in the first place. I know, when you look at the agenda, it seems like mostly gathered to conduct some very specific cut and dry policy business. But actually, this is about as important as it gets for us. What we're embarking on today is probably the most ambitious campaign of any of us has ever been involved in before. 2023 is going to be a year for the history books for MGEU. I have to tell you, since I was elected president about a year and a half ago, it's become clearer every day what our union is capable of. I can't say enough about working with our elected board of directors and MGEU staff. Together, they bring an incredible mix of experience and energy to our union. And together, over the last few months, we've developed a bold strategic plan for the MGEU members, which I'm going to share with you today. 2023 is going to be the year we take a stand together. As elected MGEU leaders, each of you in this meeting is key to our success. Today, we're going to move our plan forward, harnessing the experience and energy of all of you. So first, I'm going to spend a few minutes taking you through what got us here. Some of it I'm sure you already know. I don't have to tell you that your paycheck is getting smaller and it's not buying what it used to buy. And some of it may be less obvious. Why now? What's so special about 2023? But I'll try and put it all together so that we're on the same page. Then I'll take you through the plan, how we got here. First, I'm going to spread this message far and wide. And second, mobilize membership like never before. No problem, right? Okay, just bear with me. I'm not going to be saying this be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is. Most of us here today have been in and around this union for the last 5 years or so. If you haven't, then welcome and listen closely. As MGEU members, we're working through nearly 7 years of Tory austerity. When the province introduced unconstitutional wage freeze legislation for all public sector workers, we watched our union take the lead in a long, frustrating legal fight. It was the right thing to do. And we did make some gains, but it took a toll. By the time all was said and done, when it came to wages, most MGEU members had fallen behind. At the same time, global forces like the pandemic and the invasion of Ukraine, things way beyond our control as a union, have come into play. For over 20 years, inflation has been much a factor in our lives. Housing may have gone up, but things like electronics, phones, TVs, computers, they just got cheaper every year. A carton of milk in 2022 didn't cost much more than it did in 2000. But those of you working in the 80s, I was still a kid riding my bike. You'll remember when the price of a chocolate bar seemed to double every year. And so here we go again. High inflation is back at a time when public sector wages have been stagnating for years. Our paychecks are most definitely not going as far as they used to, and we're moving backwards. This has become especially acute in the public sector. I've been on the road this fall visiting workplaces throughout the province. Did you know what I heard up in Swan River? Our provincial parks are struggling to find campground staff because the local McDonald's pays $3 more per hour. So what to do? As union, how can we turn this around? I know many of you sit on your bargaining committees, and I'm sure you hear the same thing I sometimes hear. Hey, MGEU, you don't get a good enough deal for us. Or the union better get a good deal for us this time. More than ever, members are expecting more, and they should. But the convention needs to change. But this conversation needs to change, starting now. Our response needs to be, okay, are you willing to fight for a better deal? Are you prepared to take job action? Because here's the thing, no public sector employer is going to come to the table this round and agree to the kind of significant wage increases that are required. It's going to take the kind of strong and sustained pressure that only unions can wield. Enough of us need to care enough about moving wages forward to step up to the plate. Not dozens of us, not hundreds of us, but thousands of us. That's why it's pointless to talk about the union. In order to harness our leverage, we need the results. It needs to be our union. Forget pointing the finger and telling each other what you should do. It has to be what we are willing to do together. When push comes to shove, this is how unions work. It's how they've always worked. For public service unions like the MGEU, it's just a little more complicated. The reality is, many of us are considered essential services, limiting our opportunities to truly disruptive job action. Our boss, the government, can always try and legislate our rights away. Doug Ford just tried this in Ontario. He tried to make it illegal for educational support staff to walk off the job. A few of us actually drove out to Kenora to join the protest. It was only thanks to public pressure that he backed down. So there are complications, but nothing insurmountable. Not if we put our heads together and think strategically, like we're here to do today. And if we seize on the opportunity right out there right now, in 2023, a number of stars are aligning for us. First, Over half of our membership, 4 of our major tables are either in negotiations or heading there very soon. Our post-secondary education members have already turned down an offer and are considering their next steps. Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries has yet to deliver a funding mandate to GALICO members, so monetary talks are on hold. Both MPI and the civil service are scheduled to begin negotiations in March. Together, the bargaining reps and negotiators for these groups have begun creating a joint bargaining coalition. And as you can probably guess what their chief priority is, that's right, catching up and keeping up. We've got at least 40 other locals at the table right now. Most, like the social service, rely on wage precedents determined by these major tables. So over the next months, the majority of MGEU members have a unique opportunity. We can step up and hold our employees to account on an issue that impacts us all. Inflation protection, COLA or cost of living adjustment. It can be described several ways. But I think if you want to take away anything from today, it's this phrase. If we truly want our wages to catch up and keep up, we must all stand up. And I'm going to say it again. If we truly want our wages to catch up and keep up, we must all stand up. We should all get really comfortable saying it, and at our members and where they're at. We have to say it a lot. Public sector workers are probably, on the whole, more risk averse than most. We want somebody else to rock the boat. But again, timing is of the essence. Pandemic disruptions, frontline worker burnout, labor market shifts, these are all cause for great stress and hardship. They also provide an opportunity for real change. Do you all remember the great blizzard that never was last spring? I think it was in March, and they were predicting a blizzard of the century kind of thing in and around Winnipeg. So restaurants, stores, offices, highways, you name it, everything just shut down. Everybody stayed home for a day or two, just in case. And in the end, it was just your average high winds and snow. But the point is, there's no way things would have shut down like that before the pandemic. I don't think any of us came out of those years of lockdowns quite the same. Things that seemed unimaginable suddenly became business as usual. I would say we're generally less afraid of disruption than before. These are unsettling times. You look around, you read the papers, and we're shaking things up. This past August, civil service members in BC who belong to our sister union, MGEU, took part in job action to seek wages more in line with the cost of living. It's a great case study for how public service workers can strategically turn the pressure up despite essential services. This past fall, BCGU civil service workers delivered a strong strike mandate to show their support of the bargaining committee. The liquor warehouse workers, who are a branch of the civil service there, walked the picket line on behalf of the entire civil service membership for 3 weeks. For one of those weeks, other civil service members refused overtime and support. When the dust settled, BCGU members managed to get a contract that went a long way towards catching up and keeping up. I think one of the big takeaways from this example, other than they achieved far more than they would have without job action, is that BCGU strike policies ensured that their liquor workers did not pay too high a price for taking the lead. This is something we'll all be talking about when we get down to our policy business later today. Some of you have also noticed that the Public Service Alliance of Canada has been making some real noise in the media lately. After nearly 2 years at the table with the federal government, they are seeking strike mandates from over 100,000 PSAC members across the country. PSAC has asked for 4.5% in each year of the 3-year agreement. The government is offering an average of 2.06 over a 4-year agreement. What's interesting is in the media's coverage of the labor experts are saying PSAC's starting position is appropriate. And they're saying that given inflation, more and more labor disruption and unrest is inevitable. So we're not alone in this. Other Canadians are already in the same boat and are already rocking that boat. There is momentum and we don't want to miss it. Which brings us to our business at hand. Before we ask our members to step up and put themselves on the line for a better deal, we must assure them that we have their backs, and we do. Over the past several months, the MGEU Finance Committee conducted a review of all our strike-related constitutional and policy manual provisions. Now they're recommending a number of amendments and changes to better support members as they decide strike action is needed to get a fair deal. If we want to convince members that strike mandates are the best way forward, we must also be prepared to minimize the pain of walking a picket line. We also have to find ways to ensure those called in as essential don't pay an inordinate price. I think the recommendations we're going to be talking about strike a great balance between making strike mandates less scary and more fair and solid financial management of our defense fund. We're going to spend the next several hours getting into all that. Right now, I'd like to skip ahead a bit and leave you with what's going to be the real make or break of this 2023 campaign. Because we can have the most modern and adaptable and reassuring job action policies, but if there are no use if our members don't know about them. We're going to have to start communicating and mobilizing big time. We're going to have to rally thousands and thousands of members around an issue that impacts all of us. Our wages must catch up and keep up with the cost of living. And as I said before, this isn't going to be easy. I know each of you have put up your hand at one time or another. That's why you're here. It can also be so frustrating when members don't seem to know how unions actually work. But the whole reason I got involved with the MGEU, the whole reason I wanted to become president, is because I knew what our union could do and should be able to do. About 10 years ago, I attended my first MGEU training, the most basic one. We are the MGEU. And I'll never forget the guy there who said straight up, MGEU doesn't strike, which blew me away. What does that mean, MGEU doesn't strike? We're a big, diverse union with locals that represent thousands, like Crowns and Civil Service, and some others that are a lot smaller, maybe even a single location. The truth is, we've delivered plenty of strike mandates or taken job action on behalf of specific groups for specific reasons over the years. And there's absolutely no reason we as a union can't rally together around a common cause when the time comes. We just have to break it down into the network that harness our strength. Think about it. At any given time, dozens and dozens of MGEU locals and components are at the table. I always wondered why our bargaining committees didn't talk more to each other, share strategies, share priorities as it went along, and now they are. We've built a network of bargaining committees that represent over half our membership. Right now, they're creating a common bargaining framework as we go. The more, the merrier. This communication and connection between many active bargaining committees is going to be central to our success. But our activist network is going to be equally important in pulling this off. Local executives, stewards, even health and safety reps. These are the folks who generally understand why our union is only as strong as our members. I know many of you here are part of this network. You're our eyes and ears in the workplaces. You've already put your hand up, already stepped up. And after today, taking a stand together starts with you. Okay, I'm going to say it again because it's important. If we truly want our wages to catch up and keep up, we must all stand up. And for you visual learners out there, think of an activist network armed with this message as a stone in a pond rippling out to the broader membership. Or if you're more linear, here are some next steps. Talk to any member in your workplace who will listen about why it's time to deliver a strike mandate and take potential job action to catch up with the cost of living. Ask members to make sure we've got their contact information, email, phone numbers inside our system so we can send out communication to them. And identify members who seem gung-ho and encourage them to become workplace campaign contacts or run for elected positions. Number 2 is crucial. Members are more likely to pay attention to the union communications when their local is bargaining. But if they're not in the database, we have no way to push out that information to reach them. Having said that, I think a lot of this campaign is going to gain steam by members talking to members, so you guys talking to people. Engaging and mobilizing each other is the easiest conversation when there's a chance for Q&A and give and take. Which is not to say this can't happen on screen like we're doing today. Thanks to the pandemic restrictions, we're all the way more comfortable conversing online. These days, that actually many members might show up to hear about something virtually who wouldn't bother coming to a meeting in person or wouldn't have the time. We have more options than ever to expand those networks. Still, whatever medium we use, it's the champions of the campaign, you, me, everyone here today, it's us who are going to have to shout this from the rooftops. Bargaining committees cannot do this on their own. 10, 15, 25,000 members must make their position loud and clear. I'm willing to put myself on the line for this. Will we get everything we ask for? Those of you in bargaining committees, you know the answer. In the end, if both sides are less than happy, it's probably a fair agreement. What we know for certain is that now is an opportune time to push with all we've got. And each and every member deserves to know what's possible if we leverage our strength and deliver those strike mandates. In 2023, we have a unique opportunity to pull this together and demand the kinds of gains that all of us want. Today, we'll lay the groundwork using what we've learned from others across the country. I've got my Fitbit all charged up and ready to count those steps. I can't wait to start this journey with all of you. Thank you. Let's take a stand together. Thank you, everyone. And now we'll take a break, and we're running a bit ahead of schedule, so we'll break till 10:45. So thank you, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Just wanted to let you know I got a text during the break that I spoke too fast during the speech, so we're going to have to do that again so people can hear it. I'm just joking. We're not doing that. Watch everybody panic in here. It's okay. With that, though, now I would like to present the Credentials Committee. Our Credentials Committee is Ed Miller, Andrew Malaysia, and Diana Schultz. And now I'd like to recognize Diana Schultz to present the report of from the Credentials Committee. She's still muted. You're muted again, Diana.
How about now?
You're good.
All right. So my name is Diana Schultz, and I'm a member of the Convention Credentials Committee. On behalf of the committee, I provide the following report. The total number of registered delegates as of 10:15, Friday, February 24th, 2023, that's today, is 185. The total number of registered observers is 11. And as of 10:15 this morning, there were 177 delegates in the convention hall. And there were 10 observers, official observers participating. And I move acceptance of the report of the Credentials Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Do we have a seconder for the credentials report? I see Darcel Lecoq as a seconder. The report has been moved and seconded. The ballot will be coming up shortly. So let's please vote on the ballot is now open, so please vote on the report. Thank you. Uh, 15 seconds remaining on the ballot. Please get your votes in. Thank you for voting. Just not going to put it on the screen. The credential reports is carried, 151 votes to 3. So now we'll get back to our regular business. With that, now I'd like to turn the chair over to Kimberly Lynn, our second vice president, and Jean-Guy Bourgeois, director of internal operations. They're going to take us through why these changes matter and what wouldn't give us a good understanding of what's going to happen. Take it over, Kimberly.
Good morning. You've already heard from Kyle about taking a stand bargaining framework. This framework was formally adopted by the Board of Directors in October. That framework called for the Finance Committee to conduct a review of all MGU constitutional and policy provisions related to strikes.
The Finance Committee's marching orders for this review were to make recommendations to amend the Constitution and Policy Manual so that they provide better financial support to members taking job action, so that they provide strike pay even during targeted or rotating strikes, so that they ensure all bargaining unit members share in the burden of strike equitably, so that they provide for a defense fund that sustainably supports MGEU strike policies, and so that they address problems that have been identified in current policies and provisions over the years.
In conducting this review, the Finance Committee did some research. The committee compiled and considered the strike-related policies of other unions within the NUPCI family. Many of these are summarized in Appendix B of your technical background or of your delegate handbook. In doing this research, we paid particular attention to BCGEU's approach because we wanted to learn from their recent successful strike action for a new collective agreement for their public services. Based on this research and a look at our own experience, the committee made recommendations in these three areas: strike pay, our defense fund, and dues.
MGEU's current policy on eligibility for strike pay sets a picket duty requirement of 20 hours per week. This picket duty requirement is a minimum. That means that members can either perform at least 20 hours of picket duty in a given week and receive full strike pay, or if they picket fewer than 20 hours per week, they receive no strike pay for that week. Another feature of current policy is that strike pay is not prorated to the number of picketing hours performed. This is so even during the first and last weeks of a strike, when there may only be a partial week of strike activity during which picketing is scheduled. 20 hours of picketing are still required to receive strike pay in such situations. Another issue is that picket duty requirement does not currently explicitly make allowances for members who are unable to picket due to disability. And currently, policies determining who qualifies for strike pay do not make any references to lockouts as a situation when strike pay may be needed.
The Finance Committee made a series of recommendations about the policies that determine if a member qualifies for strike pay. Clarify the rules determining eligibility for strike pay applied during a lockout as well as a strike. This was our understanding, but the policy was not clear on this point, and it really should be. Maintain the 20 hours per week picket duty requirement as before. Maintain the picket duty requirement as a minimum. No pay for less than 20 hours per week, not an hourly rate item. We will permit prorating of the picket duty requirement when a strike begins or ends midweek. This decision would be made by the Board of Directors in consultation with the bargaining committee. We would permit prorating of the picket duty requirement during rotating or targeted strikes that only require a member to be on strike for part of the regular work week. This decision would also be made by the Board of Directors in consultation with your bargaining committee. And we had expanded the types of duties that count towards the 20 hours per week minimum to include other MGU authorized strike or lockout work, such as working in your strike headquarters, serving on the bargaining committee, or other strike-related work. This can accommodate members with a disability. These amendments are all proposed in FC2.
Current MGU policy sets strike pay at $300 per week, a level that is quite consistent with most other unions in the NUPCI family. These range typically from $200 to $350 per week, with the notable exception of the BCGEU, which pays $500 per week or 70% of gross pay, whichever is less. Under current policy, the amount of strike pay is not related in any way to a member's regular rate of pay. It's $300 per week, regardless of your regular pay. Even taking into consideration the non-taxable status of strike pay, the current amount of strike pay is below a living wage. And under current rules, the amount of strike pay may not be increased even during a targeted strike in which a minority of members in a bargaining unit are required to bear a significantly disproportionate share of the strike burden. For example, If during Golico bargaining, only the liquor distribution center were required to go on strike, the current policy does not permit the Board of Directors to increase strike pay for those members undertaking the strike on behalf of the entire bargaining unit. By contrast, in BC, the BCGEU can authorize enhanced strike pay when a relatively small group of members within the bargaining unit is required to take strike action on behalf of the entire unit. They did this in their recent successful job actions for a new public service agreement. Current policy also does not specify that strike pay is paid during a lockout, even though that is clearly our intent. Another issue is that current policy does not allow for prorating of strike pay when the minimum picket duty requirement is prorated. For example, if a strike in a workplace with a 5-day work week begins on a Wednesday, and the board and bargaining committee decide to adjust the minimum picket duty requirement to 12 hours for that week, then strike pay could not accordingly be adjusted to $180 for that week, even though there would only be 3 days of strike activity that week. Similarly, if MGEU undertakes a rotating strike in a workplace with a 5-day work week and each member of the bargaining unit is required to strike 1 day per week, then even if the board and bargaining committee decided to adjust the minimum picket duty requirement to 4 hours for that week, it could not adjust strike pay to $60 for that week. And finally, with the current policy, MGEU is committed to attempt to negotiate a continuation of essential benefits for striking members, but that provision does not specify that this same commitment applies during a lockout.
Amount of strike pay proposed. Increase strike pay to $500 per week or 70% of gross pay, whichever is less. Enable board to approve enhanced strike pay up to 75% of gross pay in a targeted strike. Permit prorating of strike pay when the picket duty minimum has been prorated. Clarify that members may earn strike pay during a lockout, and commit MGEU to try to negotiate continuation of essential benefits during a lockout. This approach will make taking job action much more affordable for members, especially when you note that strike pay is not taxable. This approach is more supportive of targeted strike actions like those undertaken recently in BC. A small group can engage in strike action on behalf of a larger group without paying an unfair price. Where the board has the final decision, the board is required to first consult with the bargaining committee. The board is ultimately responsible for approving strike action, for ensuring financial health and sustainability of the union's budget and defense fund, and for balancing interests across the union.
Current defense fund arrangements are as follows. The MGEU funds all strike or lockout activity from the defense fund, which currently holds almost $38 million in assets. Strike costs include both strike pay and other strike-related costs, such as signs, supplies, rental of a strike headquarters, fuel for portable generators, etc. Our current policy requires that when the defense fund falls below $10 million, the provincial officers must conduct a review of the level of strike pay and provide a report to the Board of Directors regarding the sustainability of strike pay rates and making recommendations for strike pay rates going forward.
With the proposed increase in strike pay, the Finance Committee believes it is prudent to begin consideration of changes to strike pay rates earlier than when it falls below the $10 million mark. The committee recommends that this 10 million threshold be moved to 20 million. It is important to note that this review does not require a reduction in strike pay rates. It simply requires the officers and the board to review the situation and consider it. The sooner that process begins, the better. More time to take action without necessarily making big reductions in strike pay. Again, these recommended changes are included in FC2.
Current policy regarding dues exemption during a strike specifies that members in receipt of strike pay, in other words, performing a minimum of 20 hours of picket duty per week, are deemed to have fully paid their union dues. This exempts them from paying dues on strike pay while still maintaining their status as members in good standing. While the Finance Committee supports this current policy, it notes that the current policy language is somewhat confusing and unclear. It reads, Persons who receive strike pay from the union will be deemed to be continuing to pay union dues, which have been deducted at source from their strike pay. That final clause, which have been deducted at source from their strike pay, implies that dues will actually be deducted from strike pay and seems to contradict the idea that dues are deemed to have been paid by members in receipt of strike pay. This current policy also does not specify that it also applies during a lockout, although that is clearly the union's intent.
Dues exemptions during a strike, delete unclear language which has been deducted from the source, add lockout. We feel that as long as you are in receipt of strike pay, you are an active member. We do not deduct dues from your strike pay. The new language makes this very clear for you.
Current policy provides for extra dues when the defense fund falls. The current constitution says the board may increase dues by up to 25% with a 2/3 vote if the defense fund drops below 50% of what it was before the strike started, or if it drops to less than $1 million at any time, and if the increase is used only for the defense fund. The Finance Committee, in its review, and the Board of Directors identified a number of problems with this provision. First, there are a number of possible interpretations of how high the dues rate could be increased under the, quote, may increase your current dues by up to 25% provision. It could mean that the dues rate itself could be increased by a factor of up to 25%. So for example, the current 1.25% dues rate could be increased to as much as 1.56%, because 25% of 1.25 is 0.31. Alternatively, it could mean that the dues rate could be increased by up to 0.25. So for example, it could mean that the current 1.25% dues rate could be increased to 1.50%. Or another interpretation is it could mean that the dues rate could be increased to as much as 25%. So that would mean that the current dues rate would go from 1.25% to 25%. This lack of clarity is of great concern, particularly given the wide range of possible interpretations. Another issue that was identified is that the current provision does not specify how long a dues rate increase approved by the board under this provision would continue. This is particularly concerning in light of the impact that the potentially significant dues rate increases could have on members. A third issue that was identified is that there may be situations where it's not clear how to determine the threshold that the defense fund has fallen below 50% of what it was, quote, before the strike started. For example, there may be more than one strike or lockout underway simultaneously. And finally, that $1 million threshold is much too low in the view of the Finance Committee. If a significant dues increase were required to sustain a strike or lockout or to replenish the defense fund, that decision should be made well before the defense fund falls so low, particularly if the amount of strike pay is increased. And although I said finally, there was actually another concern raised. The current provisions enable the Board of Directors to increase the dues rate even with the requirement for an elevated 2/3 vote. That contradicts a core MGEU principle that the dues rate is set by members at convention.
Initially, the Finance Committee had recommended cleaning up this provision by raising the threshold, capping the amount by which the dues rate could be increased, placing time limits on such dues increases, and by clarifying the language. But when the Board of Directors debated the Finance Committee's recommendations, it realized that this provision may no longer be needed at all. The Constitution already includes a provision enabling the Board of Directors to call a special convention to consider either changes to dues or a special assessment. And technology now enables a virtual special convention, just like this one, to be convened with much less expense and a much shorter planning timeline than was possible when such conventions had been convened in person. If the defense fund reaches such a low level that a dues increase is needed between conventions, the board can trigger a special convention and let members make the decision there and then. This is more consistent with how dues rates are set in our union.
Our current constitution specifies that when a member works during a strike or lockout, that member pays additional dues equal to 30% of pay. It also specifies that this additional dues apply to those required to work by essential services requirements, as well as those who cross picket lines. These additional dues are in addition to the regular dues rate, that is the current 1.25% rate. And finally, the board and the bargaining committee have an option to apply additional dues during alternate job actions, such as a targeted strike. All of these additional revenues are to be deposited into the defense fund. The intent of these extra dues provisions is to share the burden of strike action among all members of a bargaining unit. It also prevents members who cross a picket line from prolonging the strike and free riding off the efforts of other members of the bargaining unit who are doing their part to support the bargaining committee. It helps ensure that all members of a bargaining unit have an incentive to end a strike or lockout by ratifying a new collective agreement, and it supports the financial sustainability of taking job action. Current provisions do not permit any variation in the additional dues rate to be applied in such situations. It must be 30%. The only flexibility arises during alternate job actions such as escalating or rotating strikes. In these cases, it's up to the board of directors and the bargaining committee to decide whether or not the 30% additional dues rate will be applied. That is the only flexibility. There is no flexibility in the rate. It must be 30% or zero, nothing in between. And while the Finance Committee and the Board of Directors fully support the intent of this provision, they noted several challenges posed by its current wording. First, while this provision fixes the additional dues rate at 30% and does not enable any variation to this rate, there are many situations where an additional dues rate would be warranted, but a different rate would be more appropriate. In some of these situations, applying a 30% dues rate would be inequitable and absurd. For example, in some healthcare and other workplaces, it's not uncommon for more than 90% of the bargaining unit members to be deemed essential. In such situations, MGEU would be receiving significantly more revenue from the additional dues applied to essential workers in the unit than it would be spending on the strike. And this would be very difficult to defend, making money from a strike. The appropriate additional dues rate depends on the proportion of members deemed essential. Another challenge posed by the current wording is that in a rotating strike situation where all members are equally required to undertake strike action, it's not clear why members should be required to pay an additional dues rate when they do work. After all, members are already sharing equitably in the strike burden. And if they are in receipt of prorated strike pay, as proposed at this special convention, MGEU would be paying strike pay to members while also levying additional dues on these very same members. This would create unnecessary administrative work and be very difficult to justify. Another issue is that in a targeted strike situation, the appropriate additional dues rate would depend on the proportion of workers required to take strike action. 30% may not be the appropriate rate, particularly if the proportion of workers required to participate in strike action is low, or if members participating in the targeted job action receive enhanced strike pay. Another issue identified was that the current provision treats members required to work by essential services legislation or agreements the same as it treats members who cross a picket line. Both the Finance Committee and the Board of Directors believe a higher additional dues rate is more appropriate for the latter situation. Also, strike tactics can evolve over the course of a strike. For example, an initial plan to engage in targeted strikes may evolve into rotating strikes. The appropriate additional dues rate for each of these tactics would be different and may need to be changed over the course of a strike. The current rigid 30% additional dues rate does not permit this. Finally, in the case of an alternate job action, it's not clear how to determine whether or not the 30% additional dues rate will be imposed if the Board of Directors and the Bargaining Committee do not agree. It simply says that they both make this decision. All of these issues led to a reconsideration of the policy.
Extra dues during a strike proposed. Set different rules for additional dues each of these situations. 1, members who cross picket line. 2, members required to work due to essential services. And 3, members who work while other members participate in targeted strike. Fix the additional dues rate for members who cross a picket line at 30%. Permit board to vary additional dues rates up to a maximum of 30% for situation number 2. Permit the board to vary the additional dues rate up to a maximum 30% for situation number 3. Clarify that decisions about additional dues to be made by the board of directors in consultation with your bargaining committee. Specify that money owing from additional dues rate may be recovered retroactively. These changes are included in Constitutional Amendment CR1. The recommended changes treat scabs differently for members required to work due to essential services or due to not being part of the targeted strike action. That is appropriate because these are completely different situations. These changes allow for some flexibility in the rate of additional dues. The board and the bargaining committee will be able to make a decision about the right additional dues rate based on factors such as size of the group, cost of the strike, the relative proportion required to work versus strike, and pay levels in the bargaining unit, etc. These changes make it clear that the bargaining committee has a key say in the decision, but that the board is ultimately responsible for the financial welfare of the union. Generally, these changes add the flexibility needed to ensure a more equitable sharing of the burden of the strike. The examples on page 20 and 21 of your delegate booklet are helpful, though much will depend on the actual details and circumstances when a real-world situation arises. The main situation would be better with these changes are those where the vast majority of members of a bargaining unit are required to strike by an essential service requirement. In such cases, a much lower additional dues rate of 30% would be more equitable. In summary, if delegates choose to approve these recommendations, we believe our members will be better supported when they decide job action is necessary to get the better deal at the bargaining table. Specifically, these resolutions would make MGEU strike pay among the highest within NUPGE, enable more equity between striking and non-striking members of a bargaining unit, better support rotating and targeted strike actions, and ensure the Defense Fund can sustain MGEU strike-related policies. I will now turn the chair over to Scott Clooney, First Vice President.
Thank you to Kimberly and Jean-Guy. We are now going to have a question and answer period for anyone who needs more clarification. In addition to Kimberly and Jean-Guy, we also have MGEU President Cal Ross and MGEU Director of Negotiations Sheila Gordon available to answer your questions. If you'd like to ask a question, you'll need to raise your virtual hand. To raise your hand, go to the Zoom taskbar at the bottom of your screen and click the reactions icon, then click raise your hand. Your name will be added to the list and you will be called upon once it is your turn. Again, to clarify for the delegates, this is for informational purposes. We will be debating the actual resolutions later in the day. And we'll go to Robin Sear for the first question.
Hi there. I'm just looking for some clarification. I'm with Local 405 Community Support as a delegate and member at large. I work with IERHA, and I'm looking for clarification on number 2, where it says set different rules for each of the following situations under those recommendations. Members who are required to work during a strike due to essential services legislation or agreements, if they are required to work, am I under the understanding that they would be paying extra dues then during a strike or lockout?
That is correct. That is the case under the current rules, and that would be the case under the proposed rules. The difference is that under the proposed rules, the board of directors in consultation with the bargaining committee would have some discretion to set that rate at a number lower than 30%. And as Kimberly Lynn indicated, setting that number will depend on a number of factors: the percentage of members in the unit who are deemed essential, the number of and so on. And so that would be a change in that the board would have the ability to set the extra dues rate at a lower percentage.
Okay, and sorry, my other question was number 3 below that. I guess the answer would be very similar to that. So if members work while other members are participating in a targeted strike action, they also would still have to pay extra dues. It's sort of as, you know, as an essential service worker. Are they currently then kind of being dinged for working when they're being told they have to work? Is that how I'm understanding that?
Well, I think that if other members of your bargaining unit are paying a price by undertaking strike action, they're doing that on behalf of the entire unit. And so it seems fair to the union that everybody would contribute in some way. And that is the intent of this dues provision that has existed for many decades in the union, that exists in many other unions. But yes, it's a way for everybody to share in the burden.
Okay, so then we could say, nope, we're not working. Is that correct? To support our members?
No, the essential services legal requirements and agreements require certain members to work during a job action, and they're not able to refuse that. So it's a balance between the folks who have to work and the folks who have to walk the picket line.
Okay, thank you.
Also, if you're talking a targeted strike, we're taking certain departments out and not everyone. So you may be expected to work if your department is not taken out, but we're kind of asking that those that are working during that type of thing, that they would work to rule. They wouldn't be doing overtime. They wouldn't be taking things home with them. So that's another way of supporting the people that are actually on the picket line.
Our next question is from Andrew Malaysia.
Thanks, Scott. Local 369, community-based social services. Just a question on clarification around the extended health benefits. I guess historically, what's been given in terms of when we do go on strike? Have we been granted by employers to continue with getting our benefits under health?
Okay. Thanks for the question, Andrew. It's Sheila. Our history has been, and our practice has been, that the union negotiates with the employer to cover what we call essential benefits, and that is long-term disability and life insurance. But I think what we've seen more recently is an effort on the part of unions in these cases to try to negotiate greater benefits for members, and with targeted actions and so on and so forth, I think it becomes much more realistic. So those are the sorts of things that we will be negotiating with the employer at the time.
Next, we will go to Manon Monchamp for your next question.
Okay, yes, so I'll lower my hand. Zoom is not being nice to me. Okay, so my question is that if this is just a general strike, everyone's on strike, you have to work 4 hours a day and 20 hours a week. So say that something happens on the Monday, your kid gets sick and has to go to the hospital, you get sick, or your basement gets flooded and you can't work the Monday, then there's no point in working the rest of the week. Or say you've worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, something happens on the Thursday and you won't get any pay at all because something happened and life happens. Is there a way to do a special dispensation so that you can work maybe 5 hours on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to make it up? So it's you do the 20 hours a week, or perhaps you can, in an emergency situation, ask for a prorated amount, like just something like that.
That's a good question. I think that the intent of the proposed change is to introduce some discretion and flexibility in order to deal with real world situations, because we all have real lives. There are also other avenues to deal with the kind of situation you described. You would be able to work with your picket captain to adjust your picket schedule, and maybe do extra picketing on a different day or so on, because typically there would often be more than 4 hours of picket duty to fill at a particular picket line. So there are a number of ways in which that situation could be addressed, but the proposed change makes it even easier to deal with those situations.
Okay. So
Next, we
then
have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So the
Go ahead.
4 hour per day is actually, it's not important. It's more the 20 hours per week. Is that what it is?
It's set at 20 hours per week. If, though, for example, it was a rotating strike where you were being asked to only do one of a 5-day work week, for example, then your requirement for that week would be 4 hours. You could work with your picket captain to meet those 4 hours in a variety of different ways.
Yeah, I just want to add that it depends, I guess, on the group. We might have 8 hours every day with 2 4-hour shifts, for example. It might be on the weekend or in the evening, again, depending on the nature of the group and the kinds of hours that are worked. But again, that's sort of the minimum requirement, and this change would really support flexibility where, as you've noted, issues arise and things happen, so that we have to try to accommodate that. And again, that would do just that.
Okay.
I now call upon Kirk Carr to ask his question.
Hello, Kirk Carr, Local 403, Chief Stewart. Just a question on how the calculation is going to happen with the gross pay. Is that going to just be our annual income and then divide it for the week? Or is it what our schedule would have been, given that shift workers, 1 week we could have no hours, the next week we could have 7 shifts? Thank you.
That's a really good question. We have deliberately not specified the methodology in policy because our member workplaces are so diverse. Some people have a fixed rate, other people earn uneven amounts of income over time. So we will have to determine that methodology in advance of each unique situation. But definitely, when we have a workplace where people have uneven levels of income, we will need to choose a longer period of time and average it out, because the intent is not to arbitrarily pick one pay period when somebody may have had an unusually low amount of income and then set their strike pay based on that. We will pick a methodology that smooths it out over a longer period, and we also need to pick a methodology that's easy to administer.
Does that answer your question, Kirk? Thumbs up will do. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Next, we have Wanda Thompson.
Oh, okay. I work at Family Visions. I'm the president, Local 303. Our weeks they start on a Sunday and end on the Saturday. That's considered a week for us, and we work shift work. So what would happen in that case? I think maybe it's been sort of answered, but how would that work for striking? And we are considered an essential worker because we work in a group home of mentally handicapped adults. So we are considered an essential worker.
Thanks for the question, Wanda. Our attitude to this is every workplace is different. We can't set a tone for each one. You have a bargaining team. Your bargaining team is going to help decide. They'll know what your workplace is. They'll know how your workplace works, and they will work with the MGEU staff reps and officers to help build the best strike forum for you. So you're working with your own people to get your strike set up.
Thank you.
Next, we have Virginia McKee.
Thanks. Just going back to the benefits question, I'm still a little confused. I understand that the essential benefits would be something we'd negotiate at that time with the employer, and that in the situation of a targeted strike or rotating strikes, there may be greater flexibility to talk about the other types of benefits. But I'm not sure I understand how that works if we're negotiating that at that time. So at that time, if you are refilling your prescriptions or you're seeing the dentist, does that mean that the benefits that we currently have are suspended during that time? And if it's successfully negotiated, we would retroactively be able to have that coverage? Or is it negotiated successfully right at that time and the benefits just continue uninterrupted?
So first of all, I want to say that under essential services, for example, essential services workers continue to be covered by the provisions in the collective agreement. It's terminated, but the agreement contains a requirement to do that. So then we're talking about those who are not covered by an essential services agreement and are out. And again, we have had a practice of ensuring that those essential benefits are in place. And what we have talked about now is efforts to ensure that we pay not only the employees' premiums, but the employers' premiums as well for those who are not covered. And so we would be negotiating that with the employer. And again, if it's a targeted initiative, then there are fewer who really are at risk or require this kind of coverage. We would obviously endeavor to do that ahead of time. And if there was any doubt, we would be alerting folks to do what they need to do to get all of that in place so that they don't find themselves in a situation where they have to go to the dentist or they were scheduled and they are not covered. So all of those things would be obviously topics of conversation, negotiation, and information sharing. And, we know how important that is to folks, so it would certainly be a priority. But again, it will depend in each instance.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Lorene Halleck.
Hi, Lorene, Local 92, St. Amant, member at large. My question is, do essential workers who work during the strike receive regular pay during the strike and just pay the increase in the membership union dues? Sorry. Thank you.
Yes, as I just mentioned, our essential services agreements provide for the same pay and so on as if you were covered by the collective agreement, even though it's terminated. So that's in place for essential services workers. And again, we're talking about whether or not and to what extent the dues would be levied. But if you're an essential services worker, and I know you're a healthcare worker, for example, the legislation and the agreements that are in place ensure that your pay and benefits continue.
Thank you. We have no one in the queue right now, but if there's anybody else who does have a question, this is your opportunity to get more information prior to debate. So I will pause a moment to see if we have any last minute questions. I'm going to say this real slow. Seeing none, I'm going to pass the chair back to Kyle and thank both Kimberly and Jean-Guy for their presentation, and then Sheila for assisting us with the questions. So I'll pass the chair back to Kyle Ross now.
Well, thanks everyone for asking those questions. I think that's really important that we get a good understanding of what we're voting on. And now I guess we'll move forward with the debate. And so we'll move to CR1, and I'd ask that Kimberly introduce the first resolution for debate?
Resolution CR1, dues on behalf of strike or lockout. On behalf of the Finance Committee, I move that the attached amendments to Article 8 of the Constitution be adopted. These amendments can be found on page 29 and 30 of your delegate booklet.
You so move.
Oh, I so move.
That was moved and seconded by committee. I want to remind everyone that this is a constitutional resolution, so it takes a 2/3 majority to pass, or 66.6%. If anyone would like to speak to this resolution, or I'd call on the chair of the committee to speak to the recommendation of the resolution.
CR1, the Finance Committee has spent a great deal of time studying the details of our provisions on dues during strikes. We truly felt that they were not flexible enough for our situations. We need the flexibility to adjust the mandatory dues rate if justified. We don't want to make money from a strike. These changes will bring us up to date with a more fulsome job action toolbox. These changes give us more power to our membership. Our current policy is much too rigid and was developed in a time where it was only all or nothing strikes. All these dues decisions will be made in consultation with your bargaining committee.
Thank you, Kimberly. I also remind you guys to get into the breakout rooms, you have to click on the breakout rooms at the bottom and select the room you'd like to go to. I'd like to go to Lisa Grantham on a pro mic. No, we're just. Forgot my list of dad jokes, folks, so we're gonna have to just wait here in silence. I apologize. But those of you with your cameras on, I appreciate it because I do see you guys. Haven't seen any pets yet, though. I've been looking. Yeah, just takes a second to get people queued up in the pro and con mic, so just bear with us here, folks. Now we figured out a special or virtual convention once, now we go back to a regular one, now we're back at virtual again. I guess we have work to do sometimes. Are we there yet? Melissa D.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Melissa D. On a pro mic, yeah.
Hi, yes, I believe that it's important that the dues get raised and that we have strike and that the 300 goes to 500. I think that's all very important.
Thank you. Just want to know where you're from.
Oh, sorry. I'm from Saint Amant, local 91, I believe.
Thank you, Melissa Dean.
Thank you.
Next, we have Simran Badham on a pro mic. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. I apologize in advance.
Hi, can folks hear me?
We got you.
Awesome. So I am Simran. I'm from the Elizabeth Fry Society of Manitoba, local 301.
Go ahead. Let us know why you're in favor, Delegate. You have the floor. What's going on? You're muted, Delegate.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
We got you.
Awesome. Sorry, so I have few concerns about, so this is my first ever delegate meeting, and I just want to bring attention to how we have a small group of people working at the Elizabeth Fry Society, and we have lack of funding and capital, and there's a lot of staff turnover because of the funds, and there's lack of training when dealing with the people who are involved in the justice system, and there's no supports around mental health services, which puts us in a difficult position when we're working with the demographic, when people are coming from the justice system, marginalized folks, to us LGBTQ. And it's unfair for us because when we have no proper training, and it puts more risks to the population we are serving and the employers. There's a lot of burnout and there's no proper tools to deal with the demographics and the team as well. And it's really difficult for us to strike because it's I would say four full-time staff members and 2 management. So it's really hard for us to even go on a strike because I'm always on call 24/7 and there's no other way I can't be at work. That will be my concerns. And this is my first time partaking in this. So I apologize if I'm not on the same page.
You're doing just fine, Delegate. Thank you for those words. And welcome to your first convention. Next, we have Richie Grell on a pro mic. We can't hear you, Rich. You're unmuted, but sorry, Rich. We're gonna move to the next one since we can't hear you. We'll keep you on the list, though. Okay, Richie. Next call. Who? Darlene Hagergot on a pro mic. We have bring Darlene to the main room. Okay, we're having some technical difficulties. We'll move on to next on the list, and you will keep your spot on the list, and we'll come back to you, Darlene, and Rich as well. James Alexander on a pro mic.
Am I there?
Yeah, we addressed you. We're good.
James Alexander, Local 14 Corrections, as well. I'm the Corrections Component Director. I wanted to speak to the convention floor today to let everyone know that I think this is a very important resolution that we pass. We are in desperate need of modernizing our strike pay and modernizing our strike mandates and ensuring that we can get positive strike mandates from our membership. I've listened to members talk over the years about how we deserve more money, how we need to do better, how we're in this horrible economic climate, and how people are suffering. And having the opportunity to take the fight to the employer and allow people to make informed decisions about their strike pay and about the ways they can take job action is important. Having this convention today is the way that we can, as a union, come together to fight against the tyranny of our employers and ensure that we are building a better future for workers in Manitoba. This is unprecedented. In the last 100 years, we haven't seen a force or a need like this. With the massive rise in cost of living, it's really important that we unify behind this cause. I know this is difficult. You know, as an essential service worker myself, and most of my component will be, We need this to ensure that our members can stand behind a strike so that we can pay our fair share to support those folks on the picket striking on our behalf, fighting for a better essential service, a better civil service, and better corrections as well. So I appreciate the floor listening to me today, but I hope everyone is in favor of this resolution. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Next, we'll call upon Richie Grell on a pro mic.
Can you hear me?
You got you, buddy.
Terrific. I'm Richie Girl. I'm a member at large for Gullico Local 61. I'm a liquor worker. I'm also the chair of the Gullico Component Executive. And I like to speak on the endorsement of these changes. As the previous speaker said, there is a need to modernize the way we operate as a union. And things have changed over time. With the old Liquor Control Commission, as an example, Gullico was all liquor workers. So it was really simple. One employer, one union. If we went for a strike mandate, we got it, and we took everybody out. So that meant the retail stores, the people in distribution, the IT, the buyers, the quality control, we all went. When we were merged with lotteries, immediately we became a minority group. We're now one of 7 unions. And if one particular union goes out at MBLL, the entire organization just keeps rolling on. So strikes effectively become almost ineffective. So the changes that are being proposed at this convention are all positive steps. The flexibility that is required to take into consideration that every group has got different requirements. I deeply appreciated that. And I'd like to, on behalf of the Gullico Component Exec, I would like to thank all of the individuals responsible for doing the work, for doing the analysis and producing a plan that, quite frankly, I feel is in the best possible outcomes for our union and for our members. So thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Next, we have Virginia McKee on a pro mic.
Virginia McKee, Chief Steward, Local 47, Area 7, Social Sciences Component. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself earlier. My head was all full of my medication prescriptions and I forgot. I'm very much in favor of this resolution. I think these changes are essential. I want to thank the Finance Committee for their analysis. I think they've done an excellent job of understanding our current circumstances and researching what the best options for all of our members might be. I think these changes support the flexibility and agility that we will need. I think they support workers like the member from the Elizabeth Fry Society concerns. There's no point in taking 30% increase in dues from essential workers or workers who are at work and abiding by the union's planned actions if it isn't necessary. And having the flexibility to take only what's necessary, I think only makes sense. And it's certainly unfair to treat essential workers or workers who are abiding by the union's proposed action. And it's unfair to be treating those workers and increasing their dues to the same degree as those workers who are crossing a picket line. It absolutely makes sense for us to have the flexibility to respond to each of those situations in an appropriate manner. So I hope that everyone is able to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. Not seeing any further speakers in the list, I asked Dots to prepare the ballot. We were going to open the vote. The ballot is now open or ready to go. Please refresh your your web browsers or refresh the vote. Fifteen seconds remaining on the ballot. 15 seconds. Thanks, everyone. I'd like to remind voters that it takes a 2/3 majority for this to pass. The slide will be posted shortly. It has passed with 161 votes to 8. I think this is a real important step forward for our union, and thank you to all for voting in favor of this. I really that. Next, we'll move on to FC1. These are not constitutional changes, they're policy changes. So they require 50% plus 1 vote to pass. And I'll pass it to Kimberly Lynn to start FC1.
During a strike or lockout, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I move the attached recommended change number 1 regarding dues during a strike or lockout to the MGEU Policy and Procedure Manual be adopted as recommended by the Standing Committee on Finance. This amendment can be found on page 31 of your delegate booklet. I so move.
This has been moved and seconded by committee. We're giving you the opportunity to get into a breakout room if you'd like to speak for or against this resolution. Oh, sorry. And I'll ask the committee chair to speak to the recommendation.
Yeah, I noticed that's not the first time he's wanted to ignore me, but that's okay. FC1, our proposed change does not change the core substance of the policy. We believe it was always intended to apply even during a lockout situation, but that wasn't clear. We are just making it crystal clear now. When you are in receipt of strike pay, you are an active member. You do not pay dues out of strike pay that the union is giving to you. This just cleans up that language for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. And I may be the president, but sometimes she's the boss. So, so if anyone would like to speak in favor or against this resolution, please get in your breakout room now. Yeah. And so to get there, for those of you that are unsure, it's at the bottom of your, if you're working on a web browser, it's at the bottom, there's the breakout rooms. And I believe on a mobile device, it's at the top. You can click on there and then select the room you'd like to join. Anyone? We'll just give it a bit of time for people, and if not, we'll call the question. But oh, the rooms are starting to fill. So We have someone on the list, but they just have to pass through and make sure their mic and everything's working. So just give us a second and we'll have a speaker right away. So. I'd like to call on Mala Tilak on a pro mic. Yeah. Go ahead, Mala.
Thank you. My name is Malwa Tilak. I'm with Local 47 Social Sciences Area 7. I'm not sure, this might be a friendly amendment. Anyways, my question is, I was always taught that headings are for interpretation only. And it looks like one of the changes that we're making is to the heading to add or lockout to the heading. So it now reads payment of dues during a strike or lockout. So I'm just wondering if that accomplishes everything that we want this resolution to accomplish.
I'll ask the chair of the committee to speak to it. Yes.
Yes, it does. It does do what we want it to do. It's always been assumed and just inferred that strikes and lockouts were seen as the same thing, but they are not. And we're just locking it down in clear language that this policy also applies to lockouts. So we want to make it as clear as we can that all of these strike-related policies that we're talking about to do with, you know, the employer locking you out still falls under the strike category.
Okay, and so just adding it to the heading is enough to do that as opposed to actually in the clause?
Absolutely. It just puts, the clauses stay the same. You're just making it good for strikes and lockouts.
Okay,
Let's go with or rather than and.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate. Now, we have a couple speakers in the list, but they're not quite ready. We got to make sure their mics are working. So thanks for bearing with us. Okay, we have Deb Jamerson on a pro mic.
Good morning, Deb Jamerson, legal component, area 26, or maybe it's 27, local 26 or 7. I can never remember. My question is with respect to those workers who don't receive sick pay or are off and don't receive it from the employer. So they actually receive monies from an insurance company. How do we determine and get them to pay dues?
That's a Jean-Guy question.
Give us a second, Delegate. We'll get you an answer. They don't pay dues now.
I can take that, Deb. If you're on LTD and you're not receiving your income from your employer, you're not paying dues anyway, whether or not you're on strike or whether you're just on LTD, you're not paying dues because you're on LTD. It's coming from an insurance company and not from your employer.
Can you pay Dobie dues?
Why not? Yes.
Absolutely. If you're on Dobie dues already, you stay on Dobie dues. If you want to be on Dobie dues while you're on LTD, you are welcome to pay Dobie dues while you're on LTD.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Deb. We have one more speaker on the list, but I think they're still working on their technology. Seeing no more speakers, we're going to move on to the vote. The ballot is ready, so please refresh your voting tool. This vote will only take 50% plus one, just so you're aware. It's policy changes. Fifteen seconds remaining on the ballot. 15 seconds. Thanks for all for voting. The dot slide will be put up shortly. There we go. And that's carried 160 to 4. So now we'll move on to FC2, and I ask the chair to move resolution FC2.
Resolution FC2, strike pay and benefits during a strike or lockout. On behalf of the Finance Committee, I move that the attached recommended change number 2 regarding strike pay and benefits while on strike or lockout to the MGEU Policy and Procedures Manual be adopted as recommended by the Standing Committee on Finance. The amendment can be found on page 32 and 33 of your delegate booklet. I so move.
This has been moved and seconded by committee. Now I call on the committee chair to give us the rationale or recommendation.
FC2, we are hearing more and more members are willing to fight for a better deal. We want you to know that your union has your back. This resolution does this by increasing your strike pay. This will mean less of a personal financial hit by taking strike action. It allows flexibility to the way strike pay is paid to support our members in a variety of job actions. We won't always need everyone out for the duration. We can do targeted or rotating strikes. We can modernize our strike toolbox. This new updated policy does all of that for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly Lynn. Well, the queues are starting to fill, but we don't have anybody ready to speak yet, so just give us a second. For those of you unsure how to get into the breakout rooms, it's the 4 boxes at the bottom. I think it's labeled breakout rooms on if you're on a web browser, and if you're on a phone, I believe it's on the up left-hand corner. And then we have Chris Kwan on a pro mic. Go ahead, Chris. Chris, if you can hear us, we're ready to go. Yeah, you have the floor. We don't hear you, Chris. Maybe pull the headphones out is the suggestion here.
How's that?
Perfect, loud and clear.
Okay, hopefully no one is talking in the hallway. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Kwan. I'm Local 47 Social Sciences President. and your third vice president of MGEU. I come today to speak in favor of this change. One of the things that is been really critical for me over the past year is realizing how many of our members are too afraid to go on a strike. It's economical, it's just fear-based. There's just so many pieces. I had opportunity to stand alongside of a very small local brave members who were out there against horrible odds, and just the courage that they have. Courage is great, but when you have something like the changes that we're trying to make, I think it makes things better. We need to look across our country. We need to look across our globe. If you are not aware of what's happening in France, have a Google search and just really look at it. There are people who are doing such creative things to fight the austerity, to fight the rich and the politicians, and to make change and to stand up collectively. These amendments, these modifications, they're doing the same thing. They're making things equitable. They're making things cost effective for us. We can encourage our members to get out and take action and not be negatively affected by taking those steps forward and being out there on the picket lines when we all need to be supporting one another. The defense fund as it sits is far too low. We need to change it. So these are really great, great ideas, great things that need to happen. They should have happened long ago, but hey, never too late. All I'm saying is please support this. We need everybody to be out there supporting each other. Even if it's not your picket, get out there, show that solidarity. And you know what, let's fight. That's what we need to do. We need to stand up together and we need to fight. Paper, that's the starting point. Now let's move it to action. Let's see the people out there. Please and thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Well said. Annette Liss on a pro mic.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Annette Liss, Local 144, St. River School Division support. I would like to speak in favor of this current proposed amendment, especially to the first point and the last sentence. Strike duties include picket duty or other MGEU authorized strike lockout related work. I am president of my local. I sit on the bargaining committee. I'm also on the Workplace Safety and Health Committee for MGEU, and I am the chair of Area 5. So I am fairly involved in union activities. However, the way that the current language is, if it is followed to the letter, I am not able to participate in a picket for 20 hours a week due to my current disabilities. I am unable to stand on my feet for long periods of time, and I am unable to be outside in weather that is colder than about -10 without having asthma attacks. So according to the way that this is currently worded, there is no guarantee that I would receive strike pay despite being very involved, and I would be, as I said, I'm on the bargaining committee. I would be at the strike headquarters. I would be participating in any way that I could be, because that is how I am. And I would be putting in more than 20 hours a week. So like I said, if it is followed to the letter the way that it is currently, I would not be receiving any pay for any of the work that I would be doing in my attempts to benefit my local. So I am very much in favor of the amendments, especially, as I said, number 1, because there are many of us who are unable to participate in actually walking the picket line due to disabilities or other reasons. So if we do have options to support the picket in other ways and still receive our strike pay, that is a great benefit to us, and is also going to make it a lot easier for us to sell a strike to some of our members who are older or have disabilities and are unable to actually walk the picket line. So I thank you for that, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Annette. Very well said. Next, we have Darcel Lecoq on a pro mic.
There we go. Good morning, delegates. Hope you're all doing well. I stand in support of this resolution. We're at a real tough time with a real tough employer that's, blatantly taking as much away as they can. Folks are having a hard time making ends meet. This resolution provides a little bit more of a buffer for folks, a little less of a reason where they have to make a decision whether they can afford to go on a picket line or have to find alternate work. I think it's important for us to come together and stand in support of this. It's part of the tools of what makes a union strong. You're only as strong as your membership. And if we can provide some tools like this to help bring that strength back to the union and give us the ability to fight those employers that just want to keep taking away, I think we've got to stand in support of it. So please support what's in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcel. Next, we have Les Sosowski on our pro mic.
Good afternoon, fellow delegates. I'm assuming you guys can all hear me.
We can.
Okay. My name is Les Sosowski. I am the local president for Local 9, Area 1, which is corrections. I also sit on the board as the area director for Area 1, and I'm also on the finance committee. I just want to speak in favor of this motion. We spent a lot of time at the finance committee writing this up. And I'll speak specifically to number 1 because of our sister ahead of us that was ahead of me. That was the whole reason that this number 1 came out, was because we realized that people need to be able to collect strike pay even if they can't be on the strike line. And it was because of people that sit on a bargaining committee that could be in bargaining and actually trying to stop the strike, but if there was nothing there like this, they still wouldn't be getting paid. There's rotating strike stuff. This is so important for our toolkit as negotiating committees are going in right now against employers that they're not willing to give anything. Or very little. We've all seen the rising food costs. Like, go to the grocery store tomorrow and the $100 worth of groceries that you used to be able to buy that maybe got you 2 bags, you're lucky if it gets you the bottom of 1 bag filled now. Prices are rising, wages aren't doing anything with it. And this is all part of our strike, like our strike book. We need this. We need these things. People need to recognize that. I really hope that the floor is willing to consider this and and to vote yes for this, because we need this. I'm in a group that's not going to be able to strike, but I want to be able to support the people that are striking somehow. And this is the way that I can do that. Again, good luck at your bargaining tables. And that's all I have to say. If anybody has questions for the finance committee afterwards, feel free to reach out to me. I can help. I'll answer anything about these that I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. Next, we have Andrew Maslegio on a pro mic.
Greetings, fellow delegates. Sort of a first-time speaker here. So just want to make mention that I do stand for the resolution. I think that being part of, well, let me back up here, Community-Based Social Services, Area Director 6, Local 369. Yeah, so just, I guess for the members and myself, coming from community-based social services, our funding models are quite different from provincial governments like Galacore, MPI, and maybe there's some fear about that. But I think this language and this changes to the resolution is going to make it stronger. As Chris Kwan had said earlier, times are changing everywhere around the world, and we have to make a balance here. So I ask that you support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Next, we have Deb Jamerson on a pro mic.
Deb Jamerson, Legal Local 26, Component Director and Board Member. I rise in support of this motion and resolution, and I hope that the membership will support it as well. Having had the opportunity many years ago to walk a picket line under the MGEU where the strike pay was $200, I'm really glad to see this move to make it our strike pay, our strike toolkit relevant to today's means. I would probably be deemed an essential worker. And so I don't have a problem giving up more dues in order to support those that have the ability to walk a picket line or to dress down in the workplace. I think that if we're going to make a difference, this is the year to be able to do that. And so I ask all of you to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Next, we have Stephanie Swain on a pro mic.
Hi there. Sorry, I just have something popping up on my screen. Hello, Stephanie Swain. I'm president of Local 178, which is the St. Amant Community Residence Program. And as well, I'm the 4th VP of MGEU. I apologize for being late. I believe Kyle explained what happened there. So it's good to be here with you all. I rise in support of this resolution as well. I come from a group that is an essential service, and oftentimes when we go into bargaining, we bargain our essential services agreement first. And it's always a point that's raised where what they are saying our essential staffing levels are often at or above what they actually regularly staff the homes at on a regular basis because there's such a staffing crisis. And that problem has just become worse over COVID and the years that have followed, sort of getting through the worst of that. So it really means that, if we were to want to take some type of job action strike, how do we do that effectively? So what I love about this resolution is that it really lays out how would alternate job actions take, if we were to do a rotating strike or some other type of job action, how that works and how that gets brought in here as considered, being on strike and the strike pay and how that all applies to it. It's really difficult in the groups that are essential services to really have any type of effective job action. So again, this one, as well as the ones that have already carried, I'm in full support of, and I think it's long overdue. I think the language you had previously was very outdated and not reflective of how the world and the workplace works today. So I thank the committee for all the work they've done on this and hope that everyone will rise in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. The ballot is ready, so please refresh your browsers to run the ballot. This is a policy manual change, so it's 50% plus one. So please vote. The ballot is now open. Fifteen seconds remain on the ballot, 15 seconds to vote. The ballot's done, and we're waiting for the slide to come up from Dots. The results are in, and 165 in favor and 4 against. That's carried. I want to thank you all for doing all this work today. I think it's really important that we're all here today, and going forward, we have to remember that we have to go out and spread the word. We have to we're all in workplaces, and we need to let our members know that we have their back and we've made these changes. So it's really incumbent upon you delegates and myself and everyone else to let our members know this is happening. You'll see probably a lot of communication what's coming forward. So I want to thank you all. It was great work, great debate, great comments on this. It's really important work. I think we're going to see some success out of this. So really looking forward to see what's to come. I would really like to thank the MGEU staff who's worked tirelessly on the special convention, as well as Data on the Spots, Event Pro, The Right Type, and Dave Sherman, our event manager from Pop Entertainment, all of your help to make this special convention a success. These thanks are particularly well-deserved. These folks have done what has never been done before. They've put on 3 conventions in 2 years, and they are already working on a biannual convention in October. I hope our next term doesn't have 3 conventions, I'm not gonna lie. It's a lot of work, and I think we have bigger fights to go going forward. So I wanna thank everyone for coming, and now we're gonna play Solidarity Forever. So.
When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? But the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. Oh, the women of the union, they have just begun to fight. They have learned of women's issues. They have learned of women's rights. They're prepared to fight for freedom. They're prepared to stand their ground. Women make the union strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. They have taken untold millions. They have never told to earn. But without our brain and muscle, not a single wheel could turn. We can break their haughty power, gain the freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. In our hand is placed a power greater than the hoarded gold, greater than the might of armies, magnified 1,000-fold. We can bring to birth a new world from the ashes of the old. For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Thanks, everyone. I just want to say on behalf of the provincial officers, the board, and our staff, I think we're on a good path and we're moving forward. And I want to thank you all for coming. I think it's really important that you're here today, and it's really important that you spread the word, because we know there's work to do, and you guys are going to be a big part of it. That's the only way we can be successful. So I want to say that. So thank you all. And with that, we've got through our agenda. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. I see Darcel, seconded by Cara Jean Miller. And the ballot's ready, so we'll be up there in a second. 15 seconds remaining on the ballot, folks. 15 seconds remaining. The vote is now closed. Dots will put up the results. It is carried 161 to 5. Those 5 will have to work all afternoon. The rest of you are free to go. So thank you, everyone. I think this is awesome. Go and spread the word and enjoy your afternoon.